Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. In the quiet town of Marrow's End, where old houses sat beneath heavy shadows and the trees whispered secrets among themselves, a young mother named Evelyn was about to face a nightmare from which there might be no waking. It began on a late October evening, months after Evelyn brought her newborn son, Lucas, home. The house they had chosen was a relic, one that creaked with settling bones and held memories in its every wooden plank. Its charm had drawn her like a moth to a flickering candle despite the locals' hushed warnings about its peculiar past. The house was large, with tall ceilings and walls peppered with mirrors. Some ornate, framed in carved wood, others simple and plain, yet every one strategically placed as if to ensure no angle went unobserved. Evelyn had never paid much attention to them during the day. But gradually, as days turned into weeks, an uneasy feeling settled in her, like the weight of unseen eyes watching from the corners. It wasn't until the baby was old enough to sleep in the nursery that she noticed the strange arrangement. One morning, while freshening the nursery, Evelyn stopped cold before the large dresser mirror across the room. The reflection was off. The mirror didn't show the usual view of the opposite wall behind her but instead seemed tilted, angled just enough so that it reflected the baby's crib perfectly. Her brow furrowed. She spun toward the crib, then back to the mirror. It was precisely aimed. Puzzled, she went to check other mirrors in the house, moving room to room. It became apparent that every mirror, no matter the size or style, was turned to angle on Lucas's crib. Even the gilded, full-length mirror in the main hallway angled strangely toward the nursery's direction. The old hand mirror in the guest bathroom did the same. The creepiest was the mirror hidden behind a narrow wooden panel in the attic, a place she had barely ventured, tucked away among dusty relics and forgotten trunks. Evelyn was sure she hadn't rotated any of the mirrors herself. The house was empty except for her and Lucas. But as days went on and sleepless nights swallowed her whole, she began to sense the truth. That the mirrors might be watching for reasons darker than simple paranoia. Late one night, Lucas cried out in the silent house. Evelyn rushed to the nursery, but the baby was calm, his tiny eyes wide and fixed on the large mirror by the dresser. Evelyn stepped closer, trying to soothe him with soft coos. But her eyes caught something horrifying. In the reflection behind him, a shadow moved. Not hers, nor the faint flicker of candlelight. A figure, tall and gaunt, with a face blurred like a distant nightmare, hovered just beyond the edges of the mirror's frame. She blinked hard. The figure was gone. Heart-hammering, she swept her gaze around the room. No one was there. Only the chilling stillness that pressed down like a suffocating weight. Over the next few nights, the occurrences escalated. Soft whispers echoed from the mirrors, unintelligible murmurs curling through the stale air. When Evelyn looked at the mirrors, faint outlines of figures appeared just beyond her sight. A procession of faceless forms, all fixated on the baby. The worst was the attic mirror. On a cold, rain-lashed evening, curiosity pushing her beyond reason, Evelyn climbed to the uppermost room. The attic was thick with dust and the smell of rot. The mirror hung crooked, its surface rippling like liquid metal in the candlelight. And there, etched into its foggy surface, was a message: "Look deeper." Fear adrenaline surged through her veins, but she could not look away. She tried to peel her eyes from the surface, but a compulsion seized her. Slowly, the mirror seemed to peel away its surface reality, revealing flickering scenes behind the glass, darkened halls she did not recognize, past the reach of her home's walls. She saw shadowed children playing with a doll too worn for any child to own. Corpse-white women with hollow eyes staring at something just out of frame. And her baby, swaddled in blankets, but cradled not in loving arms, but by sinewy, scratch-lined hands that seemed almost inhuman. With a jarring start, Evelyn staggered back. The attic was silent save for her ragged breathing. She fell to her knees, clutching the railing to steady herself. The message remained, glowing faintly in the mirror's cursed surface. Over the days following, Evelyn found herself drawn increasingly into madness. Every mirror's gaze became an accusing eye, a gateway to another realm where some malevolent force waited patiently. She covered mirrors with sheets and silence, but somehow, the mirthless eyes always found a crack, reflecting back at her with a sinister intelligence. Lucas began to change. The baby who had been soft and warm now stared endlessly at unseen objects, giggling in eerie tones, babbling sounds too awful to describe. His tiny fingers occasionally trembled as though they sought to claw through the walls of reality. Evelyn's desperate pleas for help to friends and doctors were met with worried gazes and diagnoses of postpartum psychosis. Desperation pushed her to investigate the house's history further, scouring fragmented town archives and brittle newspaper clippings in the local library. What she uncovered was a thread of horror stitched centuries deep. The house had been a site of occult practice, hidden rituals dedicated to mirrors as portals for restless spirits. Decades ago, a grieving mother had claimed that her twin infants were taken by the reflection, a shadowy presence consuming their souls through the glass. The mother went mad, and rumors told of mirrors turned toward empty cribs, always watching, always waiting. Armed with this grim knowledge, Evelyn determined to free her son. She gathered protective talismans, salt, candles, and her own determination. As twilight bled into night, she set about confronting the haunted mirrors, beginning with the attic. The moment she stepped up, the air grew thick with malice. The attic mirror's warped surface writhed under her gaze. Whispering voices crawled into her mind, dripping promises of power and surrender if only she would accept the reflection's bargain. Evelyn set her candle down and traced a circle of salt around the mirror while chanting a prayer she barely remembered from her own fractured childhood. The glass trembled, and a hand, pale with ridged skin, burst through. Lucas's voice echoed from beyond, calling, "Mommy, Mommy, help me." Tears streaming, Evelyn clutched the air, willing her child back from the grasping void. The mirror cracked, splintering like lightning tearing a night sky. The spectral faces exploded into dust, and the house's oppressive weight lifted, replaced with an uneasy silence. With trembling hands, Evelyn gathered the shards and burned them in the fireplace. She covered every mirror with heavy tarps, some she even removed and buried far from her home. Lucas slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. But even as she held him close, she was haunted by one final terrifying truth. When she lifted the tarp from the oldest hallway mirror, just one small shard remained uncovered. And in its fractured reflection, a pair of black eyes watched her, unblinking, waiting. For more stories, like and subscribe.